So welcome to Creating a Whole School Culture of Staff Wellbeing. It's a subject that I'm really passionate about. For myself, I've written a lot about staff wellbeing. I've worked for the last 25 years as an independent consultant, and I've been I worked originally when I left school and teaching. I worked with Jenny Moseley of the Quality Circle Time programme and took her programme to New Zealand and launched it nationally across New Zealand, and very much that was a programme around creating whole school wellbeing. And since then I've developed my own programme called Flourishing Schools, and I do a lot of work in schools around lunchtimes and playtimes, because that's often the time in the day where actually we're not having such a positive and happy culture. So I've written a couple of books, 101 Playground Games and 101 Wet Playtime Games, and I think in terms of creating that whole school culture, we have to think about where it starts. And I remember very early on in my teaching career, I was working in South London. I'm just going to let this person in. Sorry about this. Very early on in my school in London, I remember as a young being in a South London school, and we had an amazing deputy head, and every morning she used to come into my classroom and she would be very supportive, but she'd also point out all the things that were going very well for me. And she was like a little radiator. She was there supportive, but she was also that positive influence. So, and it's that start to the day. Often when people walk through that door in school, it's about what's the message that they're getting. Is this a warm, nurturing school, or is this a school where actually they're ignored when they walk through that door? So we very quickly can pick up on the tone of the school and the environment by walking into a school. I know I work for Optimus Education as Wellbeing Advisor, and I go to see lots of schools, and it is, you can just pick up through that door. It is amazing. So we're going to be thinking about, first of all, there's some handouts which I put in the chat that you can download. Some of you might have already, and we're going to be thinking very much about, I've just had a bird knock at the door, so at the window. So we're going to be thinking about that whole school culture, and we've gone through so much recently. I'm going to just share my slides with you in terms of COVID, and I'm sure for many of you this has been a very challenging time, and you're reflecting on what does that whole school culture of staff wellbeing look like. Some of you, I'm sure, are in incredibly supportive schools. I've been working with quite a few heads over this period, and they've been saying to me, actually our wellbeing is really good. School things are very good in terms of relationships in our schools. In other schools, I've been speaking to head teachers who've told me they've really had a lack of support from governors, and actually they're exhausted and they're really, really ready for a break. So I think today it's about us taking that step back and thinking about actually, how do we create this positive school culture? What is it like for us as individuals, and how is it collectively for us as a group? So we're going to start by thinking about a quote. This was Paul Farmer, Chief Executive of Mind. It said in 2019, I don't think he really knew what was coming in 2020, but he said, teaching staff do an incredibly important and demanding job, and employers need to support their staff so that they can come into work at their best. And I know all head teachers have been doing a remarkable job, and senior leaders over this period. And for some teaching staff, they're very supportive. For others, not so supportive too. It really depends on the staff in the school and who's leading the school. So obviously, I'm not going to talk too greatly. I'm sure other people have talked a lot about the impact of COVID-19. However, we do really have to think about this as staff in terms of now, and I'm sure you've been really considering this in terms of your staff wellbeing, and it's something for us to think moving forward come September, when things are going to be very different too, with so many children in. So we'll have that in the back of our mind as we move forward in terms of the rest of the slides, but it is a very, very important time for us to be really reviewing and considering our staff wellbeing, and how we really think about our culture moving forward. this is a lovely quote from this is in the Harvard Business Review, and it says, in sum, a positive workplace is more successful over time because it increases positive emotions and well-being. It buffers against negative experiences such as stress, thus improving employees' ability to bounce back from challenges and difficulties whilst bolstering their health. When organisations develop positive, virtuous cultures, they achieve significantly higher levels of organisational effectiveness, including financial performance, customer satisfaction, which would be our parents and our stakeholders, our children, productivity and employee engagement. And I think, you know, we've gone through so much recently, and if you had a positive workplace culture, your staff will probably be bouncing back. They will feel supported. However, if you're in a more toxic culture, the impact can be a lot greater. So we're going to be considering this, you know, the benefits of actually having a positive culture. We all know, and you probably know statistics in terms of recruitment and retention, and that's really what we're now as well, is, you know, we want to keep our teachers in their roles. We want to keep our leadership teams there. We want our head teachers to stay. And actually, how are we going to do that? What are we going to have in place? What do we need to consider? So the Teacher Wellbeing Index, which you probably saw in 2019, found that over a third of educational professionals had experienced a mental health issue in the past academic year. That's a third. And nearly half consider their organisational culture to have a negative effect on their well-being. One of the reasons why I do this is I've worked in amazing cultures where it's very nurturing and sustaining and very supportive, but equally once in my teaching career, and I think I'm very lucky to have for it only to have been once, and I think once you've been in a toxic culture, you certainly don't want to go back into one again. But once I was in a very toxic culture, and as a result of that, I went off with stress and burnout. And it's not a place I really want anybody else to ever get to. So I think we have to really be thinking about, in this COVID-19 time, actually, you know, how can we support our teachers? If people's behaviour is changing, you know, that behaviour can be a symptom of them needing greater support. 1 in 4 teachers will quit the profession within the first 5 years of teaching, which is so sad. We need our wonderful young teachers, and England could be facing a shortage of up to 19,000 senior teachers by 2022. I know yesterday I was coaching a head teacher, and I've been coaching her all year, and at the very end we were going through her a form that she filled in at the very beginning, and one of the questions was in terms of educational vitality, and she said to me, you know, actually my vitality is not great right now, and if something better came along I might take it. And that really concerns me, because actually we could be losing she's an incredible head teacher, we could be losing incredible heads because of this very challenging time. So we need to be thinking about, actually, how can we hold on to you? How can we keep you? I've got some figures and statistics here around mental health. This is pre-COVID, and I'm sure, you know, we're going to be seeing some worrying statistics as time comes on, but I don't want to dwell on these. I just want to alert us to, actually, what are you doing right now to take care of your mental and emotional health? And that's something that right now you have time to consider. So, well, Oprah Winfrey, I love her. You can love or hate her, but she has a wonderful phrase which said, "Are you a radiator or a drain?" So people can be divided into those 2 camps. And I think it's really worth considering. I know I talk about this when I'm in schools and running my whole school, flourishing school program, and that, you know, sometimes people don't know that actually they are draining, that they come in with their moans and their worries and you know, are that constant unhappy person on the staff. And equally, we have the other people who are bright, radiant, smile, lift the energy in our teams, and we cannot be like that all the time. That's not realistic. However, we also can't be a drain all the time, because that drains the life out of the school. So it's worth considering, you know, I'm sure you know a few people on your teams who are incredible radiators, who are happy, bubbly, organised staff socials, and then you've got your people who actually can suck the life out of the school. And sometimes those people just, you know, it's about an awareness, a self-awareness. They're not always aware of how they're behaving. I remember once running a training program in Wales, and this person coming up to me at the very end of the training, and she said to me, "Oh my goodness, Trace, I'm that person." I just thought she was so brave. She said, "I'm that person, I'm that drain." And then I was working as lunchtime supervisors earlier on this year, and I was talking about the same thing. This one lunchtime supervisor said, "Oh my goodness, I've had meetings with the leadership team. I was that drain." And she said, and I, you know, I really realised it's about changing my behaviour. So sometimes, you know, when we address it, actually people can learn and grow from it too. So let's think about where we start in terms of staff wellbeing. What I'd suggest is you conduct a staff wellbeing survey. I know with Optimus Education, I work on the Wellbeing Award for schools. Part of that process at the very beginning, when schools sign up to do the award, is they get an online survey where they get to actually see what the wellbeing is like of the staff. And it's a very honest survey. And when I talk to schools about the staff filling in this survey, very often it's probably the lowest score out of everything else in the school. So it is really important for us to actually find out, you know, what is the wellbeing like of staff. And I'd suggest actually you have a little look at this right now at this point in the term. We've like a couple more weeks until the end of term, and you do survey preferably 2 to 3 times a year, so you're gauging regularly how your staff. And this is just the key objective in the Wellbeing Award for Schools. Optimus' Wellbeing Award for Schools. It looks at staff wellbeing. I'm not going to dwell too much on it because we don't have that much time, but I normally spend a lot more time, and I just want you to know this is very much an introduction today. So I'm being very brief over some of these slides because we've only got 40 minutes. So moving on, what I'd like you to do right now is we're going to think about ourselves. We can't do a whole school survey right now. We're together as a group of 24 people, but individually in your part of the world, you can think about your wheel of life and where you are on this wheel. And we have from 0 to 10, 10 being really, you're doing very well, 0 not doing very well. So if you think in terms of relationships, maybe for a minute in this wheel, I want you to consider where you're at in that wheel. Are you towards the bottom, or are you towards the top? I know the wonderful head teacher I spoke with yesterday actually said to me, you know, relationships are really good in my school. In fact, relationships are better than they were previously. So actually, maybe that's where you're at. Or maybe, you know, things have been really tough. I know another head I spoke with, she said actually she's not had much support from governors and it's been really tough. So, you know, how are things? I also want you, you know, to go through each of these sections to just see where you are. If you've got the handouts with you and you've managed to download them, the link is actually in the chat, so you can download them later. And just have a little, you know, look at this and think, you know, which area am I doing really well in, and actually which area is the area I really need to concentrate on right now. How's my health? Maybe you've had toothache for a few weeks and maybe you haven't got to go to the dentist because they're just opening. How's your physical environment? How's your fun and recreation? So just for a minute, just pause for a moment, and I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to think for yourself. You can use a phrase. If you haven't got this quadrant, just use the phrase for yourself. I feel like I'm doing really well in this particular area, but this is an area I need to work on. If you've got the model, then you can actually fill it in. Okay, there's somebody saying they can't see any handouts in the chat. It's right at the very top. See it. So I'm just going to copy and paste it again. Okay, so copy, and I'll just pop it at the bottom. Okay, so you can download it there. Hopefully you can see it. Right, so hopefully you've had a little bit of time. If you've managed to download that and you are filling it in, it's when we actually do fill it, and I did mine last week, and actually our wheel can not be a wheel that's smooth, it can be a wheel that's a little bit bumpy. So we need to, we can think about actually where do we need to concentrate and give ourselves a little bit more time. So I've got, no, nothing coming up. Okay, I can't see them either, they haven't appeared. Okay, the handouts, I've put a link to them. Can you click into that link, eepurl.com. I'm popping it back into the chat again. Okay, so you have to click into the link to actually get it. No. Can anybody just let me know, can you see that link in the chat? It's not coming up. Right. Okay, what I'll do is, I can't get into it right now, why that's not showing up, because I keep putting it in there. I will send it out to everybody at the very end. So yes, they're my beautifully designed with my design sheets. So I've got a big toolkit that I want to send you all at the end. So at the very end, if you can put your, or you can put it in now, put your email address, and I'll send them to you. Okay, so I'm going to move on. So that's our wheel of life, and often I use the analogy of the, thank you. Often I use the analogy of the oxygen mask. It's, when we go on an aeroplane, hopefully some of us will be going soon, the air steward or stewardess says, please put on your own oxygen mask before you help others. It's imperative that we take care of ourselves before we take care of anybody else, including our children, because we can't, as you know, we can't care for others if we don't care for ourselves, and we certainly can't care for our children too. So in terms of, people say to me, well, whose responsibility is wellbeing, Therese? And actually, it's a mix of responsibility. It's no one person's. It's a leadership responsibility to think about wellbeing as being a whole school way. It's a personal responsibility for how you show up every day and how you take care of yourself. I can't take care of your well-being. You have to take care of it yourself. And there's a wonderful woman who wrote Eat, Love, Pray, Elizabeth Gilbert, who I follow. And she said just recently, it was really interesting, she said, I have to work really hard at my well-being. It doesn't come naturally. And it made me think that, the same for myself. It's something that I have to create white spaces in my diary to take care of myself, because actually I could work, all the hours that God sends. So actually it's a conscious choice taking care of ourselves. So leadership, in terms of a well-being, is a leadership responsibility, a personal responsibility, and it's a collective responsibility. And very much when I'm working on a wellbeing award for schools, something that I think a lot with leadership teams and staff, and by my Flourishing Schools program, we consider actually other people's behaviour and actually people's changing behaviours. If you notice somebody getting a little bit more angry or upset more often, more teary, actually log that. And if that's consistent over a period of time, then maybe they need a bit of help and support, maybe something they're not quite right. I know frequently, if we're seeing staff very teary regularly, then maybe that, they're really struggling and they need a helping hand. So that's when we can actually step in and give support too. And I'll just ask, are you okay? Sometimes, I was listening to a seminar last week, sometimes people actually don't know that they're burning out until it's too late. So sometimes we just need to say, actually, I've noticed your behaviour is changing. What are you doing to take care of yourself? Okay, I'm going to consider now as well, in terms of the backbone of our schools, what are the values? These are some that I suggest schools have in terms of having values everywhere throughout their schools, but it's not having them just on posters. We have to have them in our hearts. We can, and there's a head teacher in Singapore who I was hearing from recently, and she said, I've got all these lovely values around my school, but actually nobody follows them, and nobody's really paying any attention. But actually it's okay having them on the walls, but actually how are we living them? What are we doing to actually, embed these values? How are we treating each other? That's what's important. And we have people, the kindness and care. so that are given not just to children but to each other? Are we modelling that? Okay, so we're going to focus now. I can't think about all of those, but I really love the ethical standards from the this is from Ontario College, and it's about their ethical standards of care, trust, respect, integrity. Wonderful values, and it's worth having a look at that. You'll get to see these again, these slides, because this is being recorded. So we're going to just think for a minute about that kindness value. The Irish proverb goes, kindness costs nothing and means everything, and creating that culture in our schools, just being mindful of it. Sometimes it's just let's focus on kindness for the next half term. And we know that kindness releases the endorphins, feel-good hormones. It eases anxiety, it's good for our heart, it helps people live longer, it reduces stress and prevents illness. And kindness also, I find it really, really interesting looking at the science behind kindness, because actually when we do an altruistic kind act to somebody else, we actually get all those good endorphins released within our system. And also when somebody witnesses a kind act, they also get a flood of endorphins too, particularly the hormone serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone. So lots of amazing science behind that, but I wanted to just show you a few things of what you can do at school, because I want to make this very practical for you. So if you aren't following the kindness calendars from Action for Happiness, well, they have lots of different calendars each month, but I know in December they had kindness calendar. So, and I went into a school, and I was working with a school at this point, and they had it on the toilets, which is a great place to put on the doors of the toilets, just because sometimes we have a bit more time to look and see what's that kind act thing that we can do today. So I thought that was a wonderful idea. And just some other ideas that I've got, I use when I'm working in the schools. So writing a handwritten note to somebody, maybe they've done something for you. I remember when I was in the school at one point, and I was having a really hard time with my teenage daughter. And I remember, just being very upset in the staff room. And the following day I came into school and there was a bunch of flowers in my room. And I just, it was just that kind of just meant everything. So, write a handwritten note to somebody, a bunch of flowers when somebody's feeling a bit down. Say good morning to everyone you meet. Compliments. Oh, I'm so big on compliments and good news. So compliment the first 3 people you talk to. It's like we do this with children, don't we? When I always do this when I'm in schools, compliment children. If they've got a new haircut, notice it. That releases all those good hormones. They've got a new pair of shoes, notice it. Same for our adults. Let's do the same. Somebody's, particularly right now, people having their hair cut and hair dyed. I can't wait for tomorrow. So that's when I've got my haircut booked. But yes, people have got a new outfit on, new pair of shoes, whatever. Just think about complimenting the first 3 people you talk to. And I've seen this in a lot of schools, a Mr. or Mrs. Magic Kindness. Staff members' names are put in a hat and everyone pulls out a name for the term, and then it's your job for that term to be kind to that person. And I've heard about people putting chocolate on their desks, making them a cup of tea when they're out doing playground duty. Just the little things mean everything. Another kind thing we can do is celebrating World Kindness Day, and you've probably seen staff shout out boards too, with lots of good news on. So if we had a longer time to talk today, I get to show you a lot more of this, but I'm just being very brief because we've got 10 minutes left. So another part of thinking about our positive school culture is communicating with care and creating systems of listening. And one of the communication systems that I'm really passionate about is creating whole school cultures where we listen to one another, and that is about creating coaching cultures. And for children, it's about creating circle times and coaching circles. So, and with staff, I organise coaching circles. About everybody meeting together regularly in the schools and their voices being heard. And particularly at this time, it's crucial. I know what's been wonderful about Zoom and Teams has been actually people have been meeting really regularly and their voices are being heard. And I think that's created very positive cultures in a lot of schools. But what I'd encourage you to do is to, you know, if you are struggling, to get some form of support in terms of coaching. If you are a head teacher or a deputy head or in the leadership team, develop coaching cultures in your school where staff are taught to listen, to support, to problem solve, and you know, to actually create that environment where individuals can actually problem solve for themselves. So I strongly recommend that, and that's something I can support you with if that's something you're looking to do. So ultimately, the most important thing, you know, the way of being in schools is about relationship. Relationship matters more than anything else. It matters, and I love this quote by Susan Zedek, which is, relationships matter as much for human brains as for human hearts. And I really, really love, I'm just going to put this on, make this one, the place model. It's really worth you reflecting right now about your school. Is this a place where I can be playful, loving, accepting, curious, empathic? Is this a place where these things happen? Is this a place where I feel that I can be those things? Is this a place where these things are done to me? Is this a place where the children are treated in this way? It's vital. So I use this place model a lot. It's a Dan Hughes model when I'm working in schools and running whole school, creating whole school cultures. And then we're going to look at a really lovely model now in terms of empathy, because thinking about the place model, Dan Hughes focuses on empathy. And we're going to look at a little video from Brené Brown about what it means to be empathic. There can be confusion around empathy. It's not sympathy. There's a very, very big distinction. So I'm just going to play this for you. And Brené, as always, is quite funny. Okay, it's not coming up.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's a very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." I had it, yeah. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
And that's so true. What makes something better is connection. And empathy, in terms of having those empathic connections right now, is really important, because I'm sure some of you have had very difficult conversations, and actually sometimes all somebody wants is for you to sit there and listen. You don't actually have to solve their problems. Just being there is everything. Rarely actually do we need somebody to solve our problems. We just need to talk. So I'll leave you with that thought around empathy. We're kind of right, we don't have too much more time, so I'm going to move on. But very much a lot of what I do is create listening systems in schools, places where people can listen, be heard, and feel valued. So this is very much now thinking, moving on to staff rewards, and I will zip through this because we don't have much time. We've got to jump onto other training sessions. So staff rewards, Rich Branson said, train people well enough so they can leave, treat them well enough so they don't want to. And I really think that's how it should be in schools. So I work with this wonderful school called Cedars Avenue in Birmingham, and they had something they called Marking Amnesty Day, where they allowed teachers to have a Friday free from marking. So they set up activities on Fridays. They actually had themes for Fridays, and topics, and children rarely did writing or maths. It was more creative activities, mindfulness. So teachers actually didn't have to mark on that day, so they could go home and have no marking during the weekend. So allowed teachers to have a Friday free for marking, with the opportunity to socialise and catch up over lunch provided by the school. Amy wrote, told me what they did. I was asking her when I went in to do an Optimus Wellbeing Award for schools assessment day, and she said, oh, they had Domino pizzas, street food, buffet options as well on that day, and they had 2 marking amnesty days each half term, and the school always closed at 4 on these days to ensure staff could leave early. Now, for some people, leaving early at 4 o'clock on a Friday is really, they love it. Others actually produces a lot of stress, because actually they want to prepare and get things done before the end of the day, so they don't have to take it home at the weekend. So do consult your staff if that's something you're thinking of doing, because you don't want to create more stress. It really is with any processes you're putting into place, any organisational structures. It is about going back to your staff in your circles, your coaching circles, and discussing with them, is that something that would help and support them? Okay. Golden tickets, absolutely love these. As a teacher I was talking to the other day said she has a gold, she was saying to me, oh, I'm so lucky now. Well, actually didn't say I'm so lucky. She said, I'm so sad I can't get to go to Glastonbury this week. And this was a teacher saying this to me. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Do you get to go to Glastonbury? And she said, yeah, every year we have golden tickets in our school. So we get 1 day off a year and we can choose to do anything with it. It's a huge motivator for staff if they can have that day off. And I remember when I was teaching thinking, I'd love to go to Wimbledon, I'd love to go to the races, I'd love to go to a wedding, and not being able to go to it. So huge motivator. If you can put that into place as a leader, it's fantastic. So I am going to move very quickly. It's about creating culture of appreciation, and that's just something my daughter did for me. She wrote 10 reasons why I was wonderful, but I want you to think about 10 reasons why you are wonderful, and I'd like you to write those. Once you've downloaded, I sent you these handouts. Please put your email address into the chat and I'll send you these handouts. But I want you to think about 10 things you really appreciate about you. And I often get staff to look at the Martin Seligmans if they can't think for themselves in terms of, what they're doing really well. Hopefully you can, but sometimes these unique characteristic lists actually can help you too. So as well. So we're coming to the end now, sadly. I hope that you've got value and things that you can take back into your school. It has been a bit of a quick run through what's possible, but I want you to think about 3 actions that you could commit to taking in the next 90 days and take back into your schools and use. And I know you're going, well, a lot of you are having to move into other sessions, but I just want you to remember it's the small things done consistently over a period of time that makes the biggest difference to well-being. It's never the big things, it's the small things that we do. It's that smile, it's that warm gesture, it's that empathic response. That's what makes a difference at the end of the day. And who you show up being, that's really, really important. We haven't got time for questions, sadly, but I want to say thank you. And if you do have any questions you want me to respond, then please put those questions in the chat. I'll have a look at them afterwards and I'll come back to you. If any of you, I'm going to start doing a power hour on a Friday for people to attend and come and ask me questions. So if that's something you'd be interested in, please let me know in the chat as well. And I just want to say thank you for really taking the time out of your busy day today to think about creating that whole school culture of well-being. It is vital. And if you want to get hold of me, there's my details, and I'd love to hear from you. Please sign up for my newsletter and free resources at going to my website at theresehoyle.com, and I'd love to hear how you're doing as you go back into your schools. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your day.